So this paper is sort of an offshoot of my PhD work that has to do with diaspora mobilization, and I specifically look at the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina. This paper came about through field work that I was doing, hence the title, Research Encounters with Diaspora in Diaspora as Diaspora, in the sense that I conduct my interviews in Bosnian, being Bosnian, and got a lot of commentary about "Pa zvučiš pravo naša." You sound so authentic in all of the comments. So this paper is sort of a work thinking about the methodological challenges as migration researchers having migration backgrounds, specifically with the diaspora angle, something that I find in political science isn't discussed in detail. So I hope that it will resonate with some of the, I think it resonates with quite many of the papers we heard over the last 2 days, and I think also some inherent challenges that were mentioned by other speakers. Like I said, initial motivations and experiences in the field led to this paper being written. I have done field work in multiple sites of research. As I said, my PhD work involves research with Bosnian diaspora members in Sweden, Germany, France, and I've also spent a few over the last few summers in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So it's been an interesting journey of me having multiple positions as the researcher, both in diaspora, so in other countries where Bosnians live that I am not a citizen of, Sweden, France, Germany, as well as with these members. Being a diaspora member myself, I've spent quite a large portion of my life outside of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And it sort of manifested itself through a variety of conversation with scholars who have also migration backgrounds and who also do quite some large pieces of field work in this region, as well as in Asia. This is a quote from a book that was Bosnia Remade, Ethnic Cleansing and Reversal, that was published a few years ago, where the researchers here are foreign or outsiders, but they had this inherent discussion about being insiders versus outsiders in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They did field work for 5 years with translators, and so this was just a quote that sort of was a spark for this paper that I always find interesting. I will not read it to you, as I assume you can read. So I focused mostly on political science, so this paper, sort of the background was on existing political science research, which doesn't very often acknowledge some of these challenges. I think anthropologists, historians, sociologists are way ahead of political science in this matter, in the sense that I borrow some of this literature, and I think Hades was here yesterday and discussed some of this as well. So power relations are not discussed in this outsider-insider relationship, though it's becoming inherently slowly but surely we're moving in that direction. So there's this dichotomy between having a minimalist perspective versus a maximalist perspective about doing either no harm to research participants, doing the people you're interviewing, or sort of a maximalist perspective, wanting to actually help those you are interviewing participants. So this is sort of the existing political science research. And I wanted to sort of throw in to that and expand the field, expand the discussion with migration research and diaspora and transnationalism. So, like I said, rather than providing these narratives that fit within dichotomies, it's important to consider the larger pictures, the social and cultural divisions that manifest themselves in a variety of nation states and countries that are embedded, and especially in diaspora, sort of layers thereof that exist, particularly important. As diaspora, by definition, is that neither here or there. I think one of the speakers mentioned yesterday this in-between sense of belonging, citizenship, religion, spirituality, language. Yeah, so yeah, I'll just go from there. My case study, like I said, is diaspora from BIH, and I focus most specifically on conflict-generated diaspora. So many of my interviews are based with individuals who are first generation or relatively early second generation, mostly conflict-generated, so diaspora as a result of the war in the 90s. And like I said, there's organized factions within each of the countries that I look at. Depending on host country context, these look different. Sometimes they're purely religious, sometimes they're sort of Bosnian or what happened with Yugoslav clubs, the sort of offshoots thereof. And so I found increasingly that the researchers' awareness of the perceptions of the diaspora, of their own positionality within host country communities was also very interesting. And it came across for somebody like me doing research in Sweden, not being a Swede, not speaking Swedish, where they were introducing me to Swedish culture, and I was learning about their integration into Swedish language, into Swedish culture, Swedish politics, Swedish life. So I have some pictures, because it's Friday afternoon and we're all tired. So this was, again, sort of discussing the positionality of the diaspora's understanding of themselves as diaspora, as members of this in-between land. This is in Bosnian clubs in Sweden. One has they both have flags, right, in both. One is the flag we see here, and the other one is the other Bosnian flag of during the war. So this sort of minor details, differences in a variety of diaspora clubs and associations. But also an incorporation of the Bosnian identities or Bosniak identities with the Swedish ones. So this is a very exciting development in Swedish grocery stores of having whole sections of Bosnian groceries. And so this is a picture of the newest shipment that arrived, I think, a few months ago. And on the other side of the picture it says Help Bosnia, and it's an incorporation of the Red Cross sign with the Swedish flag and also the same colors as the Bosnian flag, of trying to fundraise after the floods in Bosnia last year by diaspora members. I think, I cannot quite remember the right number, but they raised a large sum of money that was then donated to Bosnia. And then, like I said, the hybrid personalities of diaspora members, and something that I found very interesting as positionality that was questioned for me as a migration researcher with a migration background, the discussion about coffee, and do I drink Bosnian coffee or do I drink the other coffee, the filtered stuff? Or do I not drink coffee at all, which you cannot say you don't. In interviews with diaspora members, I found, and this was during one of my interviews, I was served classic Bosnian coffee and lamb, which is, but also the sort of positionality of diaspora, again, interestingly, the picture, I don't know how many of you know this, it's called a Swedish smörgåstårta. It's a Swedish thing. It's a sandwich cake. I don't find it particularly appetizing, but it's basically they create a sandwich torte, a sandwich cake, that then has stuck on it Bosnian flags, and this was for a Bosnian-Swedish party. So it's a combination of a variety of cultures, backgrounds, etc. Same thing with the cakes. It was like a large thing of little Bosnian cakes, the little lokums and Swedish wafers. Yeah, same thing here, the sort of combination of creating fluid identities. Here, celebrating November 25th, I believe, is in combination with folklore. So sort of the different layers of identity, both Bosniak, Bosnian, former Yugoslav, a variety of things. One more example. This was on this side. She has written on a hat that they throw during high school graduation parties, which is a very Swedish, it looks like a captain's hat, basically, but specifically Bosnian Swedish, so she's written Bosna in order to specify that she is also Bosnian, but also Swedish in this context. And I found this very interesting in diaspora members throughout my research, to see the ways that they balance this in-betweenness, this apparent insiderness, as some researchers call it. And then I found the same thing going back to Bosnia and doing field work. that suddenly there was this incorporation of the diaspora or the diaspora's lack of language knowledge in Bosnia. So if you read, they have cevapi hamburgers, chicken, but chicken with a ch, fillets and coffee, obviously. I think this was in Travnik, it's near the sort of the center of the city. And then also an incorporation of researchers being really just welcomed into Bosnian homes and drinking coffee and eating the variety of local foods that was on offer. This is in the Srebrenica region during the Srebrenica Peace March 2 years ago. And clearly everybody's very happy eating food, obviously. So just to finish my sort of, my paper, my presentation, the sort of problem that I was facing is how to basically manage some of this divide between insider, outsider, both as diaspora member and not being a diaspora member, or being a researcher that has some sort of migration background. And I think for political science, it's a valid discussion to be had of which markers are important for local contexts, whether it's age, background, religiosity, gender, relationship status. I've been asked if I've married many, many times during my research, clothing or migration experience. So for example, the connections that are made during interview contexts about my own migration experience in connection with migration experience of those diaspora members in Sweden, for example, or France, or Germany, as a tool to help me understand. So diaspora's understanding that they need to explain concepts themselves has been interesting. And then local dynamics and associations. Like I said, language, coffee was one of the main markers, and this local dynamics and associations that Haris calls translocal elements of belonging, but where in Bosnia are you from exactly? And is it Krajina, or is it Podrinje, or is it Sarajevo, or where do I belong? And so it was very apparent in diaspora associations in Sweden in particular, as well as in Germany and France. I'm from Banja Luka, and there's a large component of, there's a large association of Banja Lukans in Sweden, and so I was known in the beginning as the American who came to research, and then I became the Banja Lukan who's researching us. So it was for the other diaspora associations, whether they were from Sarajevo or whether they were from women's organizations. So it's also the understanding that you as a researcher have sort of a fluid positionality within this context. And I think I'm doing really well on time because he has not come up here at all. So I'll end here because I assume there'll be questions. And I think it is Friday afternoon. So I'll end with the quote that Todorova gave in her sort of seminal work on imagining the Balkans by incorporating these considerations into research designs, which is sort of the main argument that I'm trying to incorporate into political science research with fieldwork components, is that academics can then from the very beginning address some of the methodological nationalisms that exist when doing research with diaspora and migration. With sort of layers of transnationalism, especially in comparative perspectives, in my case, and to sort of contribute to debates in more fruitful ways rather than just sort of reflecting in more serious ways rather than simply creating knowledge production or reproducing already existing methodological nationalisms as they coined them. Yeah, and I will end there, and thank you.